This is PIX on Politics Daily with Dan Mannarino.
Hey everybody, welcome to PIX on Politics Daily. I'm Dan Mannarino. It is Tuesday, August 19th. We got a little new space here. I'm very excited that we're in this new space, and I'll bring in the guests in just a second. But I want to talk real quick of where we are in the race for mayor of New York City. Of course, there's a whole bunch of polling that's out right now. Since the last time I came to you with PIX on Politics Daily, there was a new poll, Siena College, that came out. Not a lot changing in terms of who's the front runner. It's still Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee, followed by Andrew Cuomo. What was surprising was in the Siena poll, it had Curtis Sliwa in third place, but by a lot more than he was in the past. And then Eric Adams on the independent line in fourth place. Now, I spoke to Mayor Adams about this, and I asked him point blank specifically about why he thinks he's not polling further ahead and why he doesn't feel like his message is resonating. And he said, well, people don't know my story just yet. He's the mayor, and he has name recognition. And so he says, well, look, people know my name. They don't know my story because the press doesn't tell the story. So that's kind of where he's at in terms of the race for mayor right now. But it looks like right now, Zohran Mamdani continues to be the front runner, and our Henry Rossoff is out in the field each and every day covering the race for mayor. That is what we're paying attention to on that front. We're also talking about a big project coming to the Midtown area, the Midtown South mixed-use rezoning. It doesn't sound sexy, I know, but it is. And so let me bring in Councilmember Keith Powers right now to join the conversation and talk more about this. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to our new fancy space.
I love it.
Okay,
Good
this is a
here.
nice little space
Not
we got
bad.
here. Let's talk. This was a big project, and I had Dan Garodnick on a couple of weeks ago talking about this and the importance of it. But I wanted to hear your take on this because the council unanimously approved this. That's not known to happen within the council that something is so unanimous, right? But talk about what the project's going to bring to the area.
Look, it's exciting because we're building people's new homes, and
Yeah.
it happens that we're building them right in the heart of Midtown, which is an exciting place to live if you want to be close to your job or get to work really easily or have a good school nearby. And it's kind of, I think, hard to believe for many New Yorkers that in the heart of Midtown and a community that would be so enticing for people to live in, that you can't live there, you can't build residential there. So what we did is we basically took a big plot of land there in Midtown South, and we said, for the first time, you can build residential housing there. You can convert your office buildings if they're not doing well, and start building 10,000 new homes. And we also, alongside that, are going to have an affordable component, nearly 3,000 units in there that will be affordable. But here's the good news: we might get more housing than that when people start to see what it looks like to build in that neighborhood.
Right. So what's the benefit for somebody to say, okay, my office building isn't quite working out. I want to transform this now into apartments. That sounds like it's going to cost money. So where's the money come from?
Well, there's going to be private investment to help make that happen. There's also a tax credit from the state that's available for those property owners to help offset the cost of conversion to create the incentive. What we did is we said, you can do it, permission granted. Let's rezone this neighborhood. And while we do that, let's make sure a residential community has all the things it needs when it comes to park space and like open space and pedestrian space and transportation. But they're going to have to make their own private investment into it. And it may be worth it because they may be looking at an office building today that's struggling, that's hard to lease up in a neighborhood that still needs to raise the quality of life. And they might say, you know what, this is a much better investment. I can do this.
Why was residential not allowed prior?
So that's a great question. So in the city, we tend to basically sort neighborhoods out by commercial, residential, manufacturing. Some have overlap, but we try to sort of sort the neighborhoods out. That's what zoning basically is us classifying what can go where.
And what would you call this the garment district, right?
We call this garment district. So it was actually manufacturing only until 2018. And then in 2018, they went through a rezoning that actually allowed for commercial uses and office spaces, which were, by the way, happening, but allowing them to happen. What was not allowed was residential. Post-COVID, we started looking at those offices that were struggling, some that could not get fully leased up. And we said, this feels like a good residential use too. The good news here is those who want to stay as office buildings or manufacturing are going to stay that way. Well, those who see an opportunity are going to build it.
Right. So that's sorry to interrupt you, but that's part of the argument that you have to make sure people are hearing loud and clear, because the manufacturer folks are going to say, well, we're going to lose manufacturing.
So we took the piece that was the biggest garment fashion piece of the equation, and we took them out of the rezoning.
Okay.
So they're going to continue to be manufacturing, unless you have a building that says I'm fully empty and they'll go through their own process.
Right.
But for the buildings that are manufacturing today, doing garment and fashion, they're very happy. They're going to have their future there in the garment district. For the other pieces of the equation here, parts that really feel like they're struggling, we're activating housing for them. And again, it's optional. So I've talked to property owners who say, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to build and convert to housing.
Right.
And I've talked to some who say, I'm fully leased up. I'm good for the next 25 years.
Yeah. So what's the timeline, right? Because especially with the affordable housing component to this, we keep hearing from all the mayoral candidates that affordable housing is needed yesterday. So what's the timeline?
So first of all, for the affordable housing, it's basically a requirement we put in.
Yeah.
So even if we get more, if we got 20,000 new units, we're getting more affordable housing because it's a requirement for each piece that there's 30% affordable.
Okay, right.
So we might get more. But basically the timeline is, so we passed the rezoning, so buildings today that are ready to go can start the process of filing their paperwork and filing with the Department of Buildings and starting to plan to like demolish or convert to residential. That will normally take a few years for them to do. So we might, fastest is a couple of years, 3 years or something, see some of those projects come online. And other projects are going to take a little more time. They're going to figure out exactly what this all means for them. And it might be 5 years. But the numbers we have, I think, are for the next decade. So that's what our projection is for the next decade. But that does not mean buildings over the next decade or 5 years or so will say, I actually want to do something.
Yeah, with an election kind of in the midst of all of this, could it change? If a new administration comes in, could they say, well, we don't want to do this, or we want to, this is done?
It's done. I mean, this is the beauty of it.
It has to happen.
Well, what we did was we rezoned the area to say basically opportunity exists. So now they can take advantage of it. Not only am I skeptical that a mayoral candidate would come in and try to undo that, they'd have to come back to the city council to do that. So I consider me skeptical that would happen because I know that Councilor Botcher, who'll be here in the council, is unlikely to allow that to happen, nor will, unless conditions radically change in the area.
Right.
But no, I think we have all the mayoral candidates supporting it. It makes a lot of sense. I actually think the question many people might ask is not, should we do this? It's like, why didn't we do this a long time ago?
Yeah, that's part of the conversation. And also, my question was, knowing that area, my family grew up on 37th Street. There was this whole idea of air rights, and it kind of gets in the weeds of things, but you couldn't build certain height. Is that all gone? Can you go higher now?
Well, so what we did was we basically said it can be residential, and we allowed for higher density for those buildings that are there. The state basically gave us permission a few years ago for places like Midtown to do higher density, which is not just height, it's like bigger buildings, period, more units. So we're allowing that in this area for the first time. So this will be the first time we can do that. Because we felt like Midtown was the right place to do that in.
Yeah.
So there will be more. There used to be, I could sell air rights, all these other ways to get to the big buildings you see. We're saying here you have an as of right ability to do housing and you can do more.
Okay.
Because we want more. We want more.
No, that was the whole idea, right? Keep us posted on that.
I will. Thank you.
But I want to talk more with Councilman Powers right after a quick break. We're going to talk about politics. No surprise here. And we're back with Councilman Powers right now. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
So while I have you here, I got to talk politics.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're term limited, right?
Yes.
So you're no longer going to be in the council, but there is this whole thing happening right now about who's going to be the next council speaker. Do you have like a skin in the game? Do you care?
I care because I care about the council and the future of the city. I went through that process in 2021. It's a hard process, but it's a fun and enjoyable because you really get to talk to a lot of your different colleagues and I think really understand the needs of the city in a way and the different neighborhoods in a way that you wouldn't by being in your own district. So I'm friends with many of the candidates who are running. Yeah. But it's a really important position.
Which is interesting because I don't think people know this about like what goes on in the council. It's like you actually you have the council seat and then you run within the council to become the speaker. So like Julie Mennon's name has been mentioned as one of the potential front runners. Anybody that you're backing?
No, I'm not bagging anyone. I mean, they're all friends.
Yeah.
And I actually think they all would do really well.
Crystal Hudson was another one.
Yeah, Crystal Hudson, Councilmember Menon, who's my neighbor on the Upper East Side, who I think are both really good and capable. Look, I think the great thing about this one is that the members get to choose. Yeah. And if there's a very complicated, there's a lot of stakeholders and inputs to that process, and it changes every single time.
Yeah.
So with different speaker races, you have different mayors, you have different variables in place, but it's an opportunity for the council to assert its own sort of voice.
Yeah.
And it's really the second most important position in the city
Yeah.
that I think, as we talk about mayor's race and things like that, this is one that I think New Yorkers don't really focus on because they don't get a vote in it.
Yeah.
In the same way.
Brings me to the mayor's race.
Yeah.
You came out and endorsed Mamdani.
Mm.
It took you a second to get there, which it seems like it's taking some Democrats a moment to get there to support the Democratic nominee. Why do you think that is?
Look, I think that first of all, this is a more complicated mayor's race in the general election than I think we've seen in my life or history.
Meaning because you have independents or Democrats who are now running as independents. You have a sitting mayor who's a Democrat
Yeah,
running
you have
as
a
an
sitting
independent.
mayor, you have a former governor, you have obviously the Democratic nominee, and then you have a Republican candidate who's run a number of times. So I think for many people, it's more complicated. A lot of people are still getting to know the Democratic nominee, of course, because he's a newer, upcoming, Assembly member today. So I think there's just a lot of people just trying to figure out the whole gravity of the whole situation, and coming out of a primary where I think there was many different candidates with different visions. So I think people are going through that process.
Right. But so I heard you recently say, I'm a Democrat who supports Democrats, but then you stopped short of the endorsement until the couple days later, right? So what is it? What? But that's the language I'm hearing from a lot of folks. What is that about?
Well, I think for a lot of folks, it is actually getting to know him better, just frankly, and really understand. Look, there's obviously been a lot of conversation about the candidate himself, but I think that for a lot of folks too, there may have been an opportunity in the primary, honestly, to get to know the candidate the same way you would know and be familiar with the sitting mayor or the sitting governor. So I think for a lot of folks, it's really the opportunity to understand what the vision is going to be when you get into mayor. Obviously, we all watch the race, so we have a good sense of it. But even for me, it's like a real opportunity to actually sit with a candidate.
So you talked to him?
I've talked to him many times.
Yeah.
And
so what was it about Zohran Mamdani that finally had you kind of cross over that, okay, I'm going to endorse?
Well, first of all, he is a Democratic nominee, and people have responded to him, so that's a big weight on the process. And I finally had the opportunity to really talk to him about his vision around affordable housing, which has been my number one concern. He joined us in support of the 34th Street Busway, which is part of the Midtown South, so I've really seen his ability to step forward on priorities of mine. I think he's energized the Democratic Party in a lot of ways, and I understand there's a lot of folks who are still having their doubts and concerns, but I'm pretty confident he's going to be the mayor. I think it's incumbent on us as Democrats and New Yorkers to see him succeed and to continue to lay out what I think has been my vision of a more affordable and a safer New York, and to make sure I can talk to him about those issues. And he's presented a vision that I think has energized a lot of New Yorkers.
So what's next for you?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Maybe a vacation.
A vacation?
I don't know yet.
Do you want a position in a Mamdani administration?
We have not discussed anything like that. I think for me, it's continue to serve the city that I grew up in. I love is like a really big part of what I'd be interested in. So,
would you run for office again?
I have no idea. I say that sincerely. I say that very sincerely. I just ran for borough president, obviously. Yes. So I have that sort of like moment where I need to actually, we just got this Midtown South rezoning done. We have a lot of other things to do in the next couple of months, which I'm really focused on. And then I'll take it from there.
Yeah. Well, you've always been good. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.